The dust-laden wind swept across the Wyoming plains as Jessie Keller clutched her tattered shawl tighter. Her boots were worn thin from miles of walking, carrying her toward the only hope left, a ranch glinting faintly on the horizon. The air was cool, but sweat ran down her temples, proof of the exhaustion that had followed her since she fled St. Louis 3 weeks ago. Her coins were nearly gone, and the last town was miles behind. The Diamond Y Ranch was her final chance. She paused at the weathered gate, her hazel eyes scanning the land before her. A two-story house stood proud against the rolling hills, flanked by a sturdy barn and outbuildings. Cattle grazed quietly in the pasture, and the rhythmic clang of a hammer echoed through the wind. Jessie drew a trembling breath and stepped forward, heart pounding. A deep voice called from her right. "Can I help you, ma'am?" She turned sharply. A tall man emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag tucked into his belt. Dust covered his denim shirt, his sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-browned forearms. Dark hair curled beneath a weathered Stetson, and a neatly trimmed beard framed a strong jaw. But it was his clear blue eyes, steady and unreadable, that held her still. "I'm Jessie," she said, voice unsteady. "I'm looking for work, sir." The man approached with slow, deliberate steps. "Brody Yates," he said at last. "This is my ranch." Jessie clutched her small bag, painfully aware of her disheveled state. "I can cook, clean, mend clothes. I'll work hard for little pay, just food and a place to sleep." Brody studied her quietly. There was refinement beneath the dirt on her dress, a trace of gentility her weariness couldn't hide. "Finally," he said, "I don't need a servant, Miss Keller. I need a wife." Jessie froze. I don't understand." Brody's mouth curved slightly. "That came out wrong. I'm not proposing. I meant, I don't need someone to wait on me. I need a partner." Relief and despair collided in her chest. "Please, Mr. Yates. I have nowhere else to go. I'll prove myself if you'll just give me a chance." He studied her for a long moment, then glanced toward the sinking sun. "It'll be dark soon. You look half-starved. There's a room above the barn. You can stay the night and have supper. We'll talk in the morning." Gratitude flooded her. "Thank you, sir. I promise I won't be trouble." He grunted softly. "We'll see about that. Come on, I'll show you where to wash up." That night, Jessie slept in a narrow bed above the barn, the small stove her only warmth. But it was more comfort than she'd known in weeks. Morning light spilled over the hills when she woke. She washed, braided her hair, and changed into her one clean dress. Brody was already outside, tending the horses. Over breakfast, he asked quietly, "Where are you from, Miss Keller?" "East," she replied. "I've been moving west, alone." He nodded, not pressing further. He too had his reasons for keeping his past private. The days passed quickly. Jessie threw herself into work, cooking, cleaning, mending, earning cautious respect from the ranch hands. Even old Tom, gruff as he was, admitted her biscuits could shame any ranch cook. Brody noticed her quiet efficiency, her patience, and the way the ranch began to feel alive again under her care. Within a week, the floors gleamed, the windows shone, and a vase of wildflowers brightened the kitchen table. But beneath her composure, fear lingered. Her stepfather was still searching for her, and every rider on the horizon made her heart skip. One afternoon, clouds gathered over the hills, dark and heavy with snow. Cattle had drifted near a gulch, and Jessie insisted on helping round them up. The men tried to dissuade her, but she rode out anyway, determined to prove her worth. When the storm broke, snow and wind whipped across the range. Jessie's horse stumbled near the gulch, throwing her hard into the snow. She crawled to safety, dazed but alive, until Brody found her and carried her back through the storm. He stayed by her side all night, tending her bruises with rough gentleness. The worry in his eyes told her more than words could. By the time her ankle healed, she had earned not just a place at Diamond Y, but his trust. Winter settled deep and white across Wyoming. Jessie worked tirelessly, her quiet presence weaving into the ranch's daily rhythm. Brody often found excuses to linger nearby, chopping wood, fixing tack, or simply watching her hum softly as she worked. Their conversations grew longer, the silences more comfortable. One morning, Brody hitched the wagon. "We're going to Creek-Eyed," he said. "Need supplies. Roads are clear enough." She hesitated, but he smiled faintly. "You could use a change of scenery." The small town shimmered under snow. Brody introduced her around, calling her his housekeeper. The townsfolk were friendly, though curious. Inside Henderson's general store, Jessie's eyes lit at bolts of fabric and simple trinkets she hadn't seen in months. Brody watched her quietly, noting how she weighed every choice with care. Pride flickered in his gaze, unspoken but real. On the drive home, the horses' hooves crunched over frozen earth. "People will talk," Brody said finally. "A single woman living at a bachelor's ranch." "I understand," she replied softly. "If anyone's reputation suffers, it'll be mine, not yours." He looked at her, blue eyes steady. "I don't care about gossip. I care about you." Jessie said nothing. The words echoed in her heart long after they reached home. The weeks that followed were marked by stormy nights and long fireside talks. Gradually, Jessie revealed her past, the cruelty of her stepfather, the fear that had driven her west. Brody listened without judgment, sharing stories of his mother and the father he'd buried on this land. Trust deepened, and unspoken affection settled between them like the slow thaw of spring. One night, a cow went into labor. Jessie moved instinctively, steady hands and calm voice guiding the struggling animal while Brody helped. When the calf finally took its first breath, he looked at her with raw admiration. "You're extraordinary," he said quietly. "It was just what needed doing," she replied, though warmth bloomed in her chest. Afterward, as they stood beneath the flickering lantern light, he drew her close. Neither spoke, but the silence carried everything: gratitude, affection, the beginnings of love. When spring returned, the ranch awakened. Jessie sewed dresses from the fabric she'd bought, her needle flashing in the sunlight. Brody suggested they attend Creek-Eye's Founders' Day celebration together. She agreed, though nervous. In town, people smiled at them, whispering approval behind hands. Jessie carried herself with quiet dignity, and Brody's gaze never left her. By the time they returned home, something between them had shifted, subtle, certain. A few weeks later, Brody took her to a secluded valley near a clear-running stream. The first wildflowers had begun to bloom, dotting the grass with color. They sat together on a flat rock, the water murmuring nearby. "Having you at Diamond Y," he said at last, "it's changed everything. I thought I was just surviving here. But you gave me a reason to come home at the end of the day." Her breath caught. "Brody." He took her hands. "I care for you more than I should. I love you, Jessie Keller. Will you let me be part of your life, not as an employer, but as a man who loves you?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I love you, too," she whispered. Brody drew her into his arms. The wind carried the scent of spring, and for the first time since fleeing St. Louis, Jessie felt safe, whole, and free. The months that followed brimmed with purpose. They planned a simple wedding in Creek-Eyed, attended by neighbors, ranch hands, and friends. Jessie sewed her own cream-colored gown with Martha and Mrs. Henderson's help. Brody's devotion never faltered, protective, patient, quietly proud. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Jessie stood in her small room above the barn, sunlight spilling across her dress. She had come so far, from a frightened girl on the run to a woman standing tall, ready to claim her place. When she walked down the church aisle, Brody's eyes met hers, steady and full of love. Their vows were simple, spoken from the heart. "With this ring, Brody said, I give you my heart. Your dreams will be my dreams. Your life, my life. Tears shimmered in Jessie's eyes as she repeated the words. When they kissed, the small church erupted in cheers. Life at Diamond Y flourished under their partnership. Jessie managed the home, Brody tended the land. Together, they built something strong and lasting. Nights were filled with laughter, mornings with shared purpose. The men respected her, the townsfolk admired her, and Brody loved her fiercely. One night, helping a struggling cow deliver, Brody whispered, I fall more in love with you every day. Jessie smiled softly. Then I'll just have to keep giving you reasons. Years passed. Near Eden's Corner, the valley that had witnessed their first confession, they built a new home. Jessie taught local children there, fulfilling a dream she'd once thought impossible. Their children, Jacob and Elizabeth, grew under Wyoming's vast sky, their laughter echoing through the hills. One golden evening, Jessie stood on the porch watching Brody chase the children through the grass. The sun dipped low, painting the land in pink and gold. Brody came to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You gave me more than a wife, he said quietly. You gave me a life. Jessie smiled, resting her head against him. And you gave me something I never thought I'd find again, peace. They stood together, hand in hand, watching the horizon fade into dusk. The Diamond Y spread before them, a testament to resilience, love, and the promise that had begun with one desperate plea for work, and a man who had once said, I don't need a servant. I need a wife.